Hi guys, so I've said before that Brexit is like a cult. So in many ways, Brexiteers cannot admit that Brexit is at fault because Brexit is never at fault. Even if reality is right in front of their face, they will reject it. Now we're starting to see a common trend here. Blame businesses for not being ready for Brexit. But whatever you do, don't blame Brexit. Now, I don't know if Peter Lilley, Lord Lilley, has difficulties comprehending reality or he's just lying. But he attempts to dismiss the heavy goods vehicle driver shortage as anything got to do with Brexit. Here he was on Newsnight blaming the haulage industry for the consequences they're facing.
So when you look at this and you look at the situations that we're seeing in various supply chains, I mean, you can sort of draw a line of accountability here. In June, pretty clearly, it was expressed from the industry that they needed these extra visas. And 3 months later...
They needed the extra drivers, not visas.
They needed...
No, that's a lie. What the haulage industry asked for was for drivers to be put, foreign drivers of course, to be put on the shortage occupation list so they could be brought in immediately. And the government's response was, no, we're not going to do that. So Peter Lilley either doesn't understand or he's lying.
Well, they asked for the industry.
They needed to train drivers.
The industry asked. Well, the industry asked for the visa.
No, it wasn't about training drivers up, Peter. It was about adding them to the shortage occupation list, which means that they would be prioritized over other immigrants, so they could come into the country faster. It was to fill this gap. The haulage industry were very clear about that. Please, and they said it on numerous occasions, and I've covered it in numerous videos. The haulage industry asked for drivers to be added to the shortage occupation list. Now, maybe Peter doesn't understand what that is. I don't know why he's been interviewed on the BBC about this. He obviously has very little understanding, but that's what they were asking for. And the government's response was, no, hire British people instead. Now, on Friday, Boris Johnson did a U-turn and he's decided, yes, we're actually going to hire drivers in from abroad. So why did they refuse in the first place?
Visas and didn't get them.
They offered visas, of course. They will always prefer cheap labour from abroad to training domestic people.
Okay, so Peter Lilley isn't clever enough to have his lies in place here. He hasn't prepared his lies correctly because he first said, no, they're not asking for visas. And then he said, yes, of course they'd ask for visas because they just want to train. They just want to hire drivers from abroad. So which is it, Peter? Either they didn't want the visas or they did want the visas.
They have been for years, and that's why the problem's been growing for years. It's got little, if anything, to do with Brexit. After all, there's a shortage of drivers in almost every country in Europe, including Poland and Romania.
Okay, and this is where I get very frustrated with the likes of the BBC or other journalists, because they don't respond to this crap by saying, then why, if there are shortages of heavy goods vehicle drivers in Poland and Romania, why is Poland and Romania not seeing fuel shortages? Why is there not rationing of fuel in those two countries? Why are they not seeing empty supermarket shelves? So if they are facing a shortage of drivers like us, then surely they should be seeing the same problems. And they're not. Why is that?
It's got 20,000 short. Now, if those who were formerly working here all returned there, they ought to have a surplus of drivers, not a shortage. It's due to the pandemic and, in our case, to a long-term problem. But we should remember the warning in a report by the United Nations International Labour Organization, which said, and I quote, what may begin as a simple temporary shortage of trained native workers can be made considerably more permanent by attempting a quick fix from migrant labour. And that's what we constantly do in this country. We do it with nurses, we do it with doctors, we do it with HGV drivers. We've got to get into the habit of training people up, of paying people enough to persuade.
Paying people enough. This is a guy from the Conservative Party, the Tory Party, that when nurses were saying, please pay us some more, your response was, I'm sorry, we can't afford it. We have no money. I'm sorry, we're not going to pay you more. And then eventually, under a lot of pressure, they decide, okay, yeah, we'll give you a bit of an increase, but still below the rate of inflation, which meant was a pay cut. So don't please Peter Lilley, please don't come on and say, yes, we need to pay nurses and doctors and drivers and all of these people more, when you are completely against that.
Persuade them to get qualifications in this country rather than depressing pay and discouraging training both by employers and employees in this country.
But that was the argument the government made.
Opportunity to do that.
That was the that was the argument the government made to the haulage industry in June, and now we face this crisis in supply chains, and you know that the just-in-time delivery system requires the confidence of consumers. And a solution that the haulage industry has asked for has been repeatedly rejected. And not just rejected, said, actually, we like the fact that there are fewer workers because eventually wages will go up for domestic workers. But is this not the price we're paying for that medium-term wish?
Well, of course we have to pay the right wage for the job. If you want to depress the pay of British workers and employ cheaper workers from abroad, well, that's not what I, as a parliamentarian, am here for. My job is to try and see that the living standards in this country rise. And
the living standards in this country rise. But then, if we look at Peter Lilley's voting record, you can see here consistently voted against raising welfare benefits, at least in line with prices. So not even having welfare rise at the rate of inflation. No, he didn't want that. Almost always voted for a reduction in spending on welfare. Generally voted against paying higher benefits over longer periods of time to those unable to work due to illness or disability. And the list goes on. So please, Lord Lilley, cut your crap when you talk about, yeah, we want to raise living standards. And at the moment, the government are talking about, or planning to do, unless there's a U-turn coming, I hope there's a U-turn, they're planning to cut the universal credit uplift. How is that raising living standards?
The only way living standards can rise if we cease to believe that we should recruit all skills from abroad and start believing that our first priority should be to train people in this country, whether it be in HGV or in nursing, where we turn 20,000 or more applicants away from nursing courses every year.
Why do you think these people are turned away? Now, I don't know if this is true, but maybe there are limited places. But is Peter Lilley suggesting, like what Boris Johnson was suggesting, in making the tests easier? Like when it came to the heavy goods vehicle driver qualification, they're removing the requirement to be able to reverse the articulated lorry. You don't have to reverse. That's fine. Really? And I'm not joking about this. Jacob Rees-Mogg stood up in the House of Commons and said, yeah, we're getting rid of reversing because it's not necessary. And we're also getting rid of the requirement to attach or detach a trailer. Yeah, you know, when you think of a lorry, the least important part of it is the trailer, of course. Is this going to be applied to doctors and nurses as well? Can you handle a knife? Yes. Okay, we're going to make you a surgeon. Do you know where the heart is? More or less. Okay, we're going to make you a cardiologist. Is that the future of Brexit Britain?
Doctors, where we turn more than half of all applicants away.
Well, forgive me. You've made that point, You've made that point, Lord Lilley. But you know, right now, the issue is the availability of drivers. It's not a majority. We're talking a few tens of thousands of truckers that are badly needed right now, and the solution the haulage industry wanted was rejected. And whatever the long-term consequences of that, there's a short-term cost to ordinary consumers. And are you willing to be accountable for that cost that we're seeing in petrol forecourts, in some supermarkets and in other supply chains?
So far, the petrol problem is one of panic buying, not a real serious disruption in supply because of shortage of drivers. But
then why isn't it happening in other countries?
I am prepared to see more training. Mark Fell said that, or one of your interviews said that during the summer, 30,000, or during the pandemic, 30,000 fewer people were trained than normal. Well, why can't we persuade those people now to come forward and be trained?
But is this guy real? Is he serious? Please tell me, is this guy for real? Does he honestly think that people who were waiting for a test have been sitting around doing nothing, maybe like a member of the House of Lords or a Lord or a member of Parliament, doing nothing, sitting around on their hands, on a sofa or whatever, waiting for a test to arrive? No, I'm sorry, Lord Lilley, people don't have that privilege. Many people have to work. I know you don't probably understand the concept of work, but many of these people have to work. They have to pay bills. I know another probably thing that's beyond your realm of comprehension. Paying bills, paying rent, buying food. These are things that you probably don't understand. These are real things. And these people don't just sit around waiting for the government to get off their arse and actually get these tests running. But also we've heard if there are 40,000 tests to be done, if they were doing tests every day, 12 hours a day or something, it would take up to 2 years to get through the entire backlog. But the problem is now, not just we'll resolve it in 2 years' time. That's not a solution. The haulage industry are saying you need to add these drivers to the shortage occupation list. Now, of course, it seems Boris Johnson has done a U-turn and is allowing this to happen, which sort of blows the pandemic response for all of this out of the water. Because if the problem was the pandemic, then why would you be allowing drivers into the country again? The Brexiteers don't even have their lies in line.
Isn't that the point, Lord Lilley? Is that they weren't trained, and now we have a crisis between now and Christmas that's a short-term and immediate.
The people who in normal circumstances, had there not been a pandemic, would have got training, didn't. So what are we doing now to train them? How long does it take to train them?
Wouldn't you think somebody who was trying to defend this would understand how long it takes to train? Does he honestly think that to train, you can do it in a weekend? No, it takes months. And it's not just the months of the training. You also need driver tuition. What happens is a new driver starts driving an articulated lorry. They also need a trained driver to follow with them. They need to have the driver with them in the cab for a period of time. And also, even if you just say we have 40,000 tests, the pass rate is 57%. So you can cut that more or less in half. Why was Peter Lilley invited on to the BBC to answer these questions? Because he has no understanding of it. He doesn't understand the requirement to become a heavy goods vehicle driver. He doesn't understand the time it takes to get through the training. He doesn't understand he even dismissed, as we heard here, he dismissed the shortage of petrol. Yeah, it's just panic buying. Why is it panic? Why is there a panic? Where does the panic stem from? Stems from a shortage. Where does the shortage stem from? It stems from the ending of freedom of movement. Where does that stem from? It stems from Brexit. And where does Brexit stem from? It stems from the people like Peter Lilley, who convinced people to vote for something that they didn't understand and the politicians didn't understand. When people pointed out there would be problems, the response from the people like Peter Lilley was, stop engaging in Project Fear, stop scaremongering. People were talking, I remember, there will be shortages. Project Fear. There'll be queues for petrol, for food, things like this. We won't be able to import the goods that we normally have. Scaremongering, Project Fear, stop it. Stop trying to undermine Brexit. Stop trying to undermine democracy. This is the response from these Brexiteers. And now their response today is businesses are at fault because businesses want to import workers from abroad. They have an answer for everything. Doesn't matter if it's a lie, but they have an answer for everything. And the answer will always be, it's not Brexit's fault. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?